Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm really excited today. By the way, my name is Kong Yu. I'm a professor in the Department of Soil, Water, and Climate. I'm really excited that we are kicking off this international lecture series. We want it to become a lecture series, and not just a one lecture. So global issues in soil, water, and climate. So this lecture started from an idea from BI community. So 2 years ago when we met, and we started thinking that the issues of soil, water, and soil, water, and climate are global. But we rarely have opportunities to listen to the scientists, particularly from the developing countries and global south. So we thought about opening our new lecture series in which we can invite active scientists who share the same vision with us, but from the countries that we often that we have opportunity to listen to. So that materialized thanks to the mini grant from Institute on Environment. So I really appreciate the funding from INV. And I also really appreciate all the efforts that BI committee has put together in opening this lecture series. And they have been really wonderful and also collaborative. And our BI committee advisor has been incredibly productive in getting the resources to the department and establishing community scholar positions, and also really getting the private micro grant. Which really used it to improve the community environment in the buildings in Bola. So I look forward to more opportunities coming from our EI community. So then I'm actually going to pass the opportunity to speak to our department head, Brent, and we'll talk about our interest in this lecture series and our interest in continuing this then I'll introduce today's speaker.
Thanks, Kensu. Yeah, I just want to take a moment. I'm going to point out in the back of the room, there is a survey for you to complete. I'll walk through that in just a moment, but please make sure you take that opportunity in the room, and then online, there's a Zoom link in the or in the chat window of the Zoom. I think there's a poll that should be populating right now, hopefully, with the same survey that you can fill out online if you can hear me. Yeah, I just wanted to thank our department's DEI committee for all of this work, putting this in place. I want to thank the Institute of the Environment for making this a possibility for us. I want to thank today's speaker, who will be introduced in moments again, for being our inaugural speaker in this, what we hope to be a continuing series. Maybe one big point I want to make is that right now we're being asked to not talk about these things. And I just want to make a point that here we are doing it. It's important to us. We're highlighting it. Regardless of what words we have to put into proposals and reports, this important work is happening. We're a very diverse community in soil, water, and climate, and we're recognized through the university for our work that we're doing to promote this. So that's to all of you. Congratulations. You're doing awesome. Let's keep up that good work. So, real briefly on the survey, the first question is sort of gauging your interest, which will be good to take it afterwards in continuing this specific type of series. The second question is asking if you have nominations for other people that would be coming from developing regions in places where science and research is happening at sort of like a different scale or historical different funding levels. We certainly have a lot to learn from visitors who have had to be quite creative in funding over their careers, in working closely, collaborating, coordinating with communities and partners. an elevated level that we can benefit to learn from. So thinking of nominations. And then the third thing is, if you're from outside of our department visiting, and you have interest in collaborating on keeping this series going, we would be really interested to hear from you. If you individually want to contribute some time and some thoughts on how to find continued resources, this Institute on the Environment funding is seed funding, so it will expire. I think we could probably do another one next year, but we need to think about a long-term vision for having this international secret series continue. So if you're interested or know some connections, other departments, other programs, please fill out this form with your contact information. So I think that's all I wanted to say. I'll hand it back over to Kim Sue that introduces today's speaker.
Thank you, Brian. So I'm truly honored to present Dr. María Susana Alvarado Barrientos as our speaker today. So Susanna's background and personal history are truly international and inspiring. So Susanna was born and grew up in Guatemala, and she finished her undergrad at University of Del Valle de Guatemala. And then she went on to do her MS degree in ecohydrology in Netherlands. And then after finishing it, she could not stop there, and she came to the US. And she completed her doctoral degree with Hyde Berenson at the University of New Hampshire. But before finishing her degree in New Hampshire, she also had a brief moment in Iowa State University in Ames. And then after finishing her PhD degree, then Susana went to Mexico. And in Mexico, she did a postdoc at UNA, and then did cornerstone research fellow. And then it has been since 2018 that Susana has been at Institute of Ecology in Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico. And she's currently an associate professor at the Institute. And without further ado, we will listen to Susana. And thank you, Susana, for coming.
Thank you. I'll see if this works. I don't remember how to like this. All right, thank you. Actually, I'm very honored to be here, and at the beginning, I was afraid of saying yes. I don't know. I thought you guys had mistaken me for someone else. I don't know. And I sometimes feel I'm not I don't have many publications, and sometimes when you think about these kinds of lectures, you feel like people would like to hear from people who have a lot of publications and stuff like that. But so maybe I shouldn't have said that, but yeah. So I'm actually super honored to be here because it has been like return to the Midwest since I haven't been here since I started my PhD. So I have friends that are from Minneapolis. It wasn't only like an academic time that I enjoyed meeting a lot of you and the department, but also to come back for personal relations, which is actually really nice. All right, so wait, I'm gonna try to do this here. Yeah, it's working. So before I start telling you what we do down there in Mexico, I wanted to show you where in Mexico we are. And INECOL is one of the 26 public research institutes in Mexico that are funded by the federal government. And we are here, I don't know if you can actually see my pointer. Can you, wait, can you see it? Yes. Yeah, so we're here in the middle, in the center of Veracruz. And the region is basically tropical mountain, and the cloud forest was like the native kind of vegetation cover. And I don't know if you can actually see it, but the campus of INECOL is immersed in a nature reserve, or like a refuge of the very small remnant of cloud forest that is around the region. So if you want to come visit, now you know where it is. Okay, so we are also organized in different departments, and these are all the departments that we have. And I am in the functional ecology department, but we also have an environmental services unit. that deals with a lot of applied things. And if you want to visit the website of the Functional Ecology Department, we're 21 researchers and we do a lot of different things. So you can check it out there. Okay, so without further ado, I'll start with, well, I like this picture. It's our planet, and it reminds us that we live in a planet that is actually composed of interconnected open systems. And in order to study them, we sometimes abstract them like that, like separated, but they are in reality not separated. They are intertwined with complex interactions. And obviously now our issues, any kind of environmental problem that you can think of, is definitely intertwined and interconnected. All the Earth systems are basically, if you think about it, are caused or affected by any of these problems. So problems such as, I'm going to say the word that we're not supposed to use, but I have to use it. So problems like climate change and water scarcity or pollution and soil degradation and biodiversity loss, everything is interconnected. And so we encounter a complex web of threats to basically all life sustaining processes, right? We are in big trouble. And I would like to just, because we could talk about problems all day, but I would like to highlight these two very important or overarching problems that cause many other smaller problems in the global south, and particularly make the global south vulnerable. So first is climate change and all its effects on the water cycle. We know it's basically intensifying the water cycle. What does that mean? It means storms that are more, they're dropping more water per minute or per unit of time. And that creates a lot of trouble. This is a picture of the latest tropical storm that passed through Veracruz a couple of weeks ago. Well, some weeks ago. And it devastated parts of the north of the country, of the state of Veracruz, flooding basically everything, all the lowlands. And you can see from the satellites, not only one, but I think it's like 5 major rivers are discharged into the Gulf of Mexico. You can imagine how many loads of sediments and fertility going towards the Gulf of Mexico. And all these livelihoods are affected, not only during the flood, but probably for decades, right? And many lives were lost too. So the flip side of intense storms is prolonged and more intense drought periods. This is a picture of the monitor of drought in Mexico. For maybe you can see it, but it's February of 2004. That is the beginning of the dry season of last year. And in very dark red, you can see the drought that is classified as socioeconomic drought already. It's not only meteorological, it's already socioeconomical. So it's basically having effects on the food and water security of all the people that live there. So a third of the country was already like that in February. And by May and June, we had like combined events of heat waves, and the drought kept on going, right? So you can imagine like floods, every livelihood is affected in many ways, right? Okay, and then the second or the other big major problem or issue is land use and cover change and intense landscape modification that affects basically all the energy and matter cycling, everything, water cycling, nutrient cycling, and thus affects changing or changes life-sustaining processes. This is just a picture of a dead mangrove that I'll talk about it later, but just there so that you can have a sense of this was caused basically because a little piece of the landscape was modified, which modified the inundation regime of the wetland, and it ended up killing 90 hectares of mangrove during many years. But this is the effect of a small modification to the landscape that in the end killed a whole ecosystem. And then we can talk about many, many, many other examples of things like that happening, right? And I wanted to make also this point, which is normally not talked about, but it's very important, at least for me, and for a lot of us down in Global South. The colonial legacies are not only like a historical footnote that we read in books and papers about it. This is why the Global South is particularly vulnerable. We have these colonial legacies that cause, or that could explain actually, that everything that pretty much happens down there. So we have extractive models of development, and it also affects on how we pursue knowledge to build solutions for our problems. So we have dominance of Western knowledge systems, and also we suffer helicopter science. I don't know if you've heard about it, but if you haven't, please search and look for it. Okay, so I also wanted to make this point, and so in Mexico, and I don't know many in other parts of the world also, but in Mexico specifically or explicitly, scientists, we are public servants. We are publicly funded with limited public funds. So we are asked to provide solutions, evidence, or knowledge-based solutions to national problems. That's what the Mexican science policy says, that's our job, and that's why they pay us for. So how can we do it? We are scientists. It's hard. We are trained to be, focused on a question, and we are probably normally narrowly trained in one discipline, right? And as science history moved along, it favored the disciplinary or the over-specialized even training of future scientists. And so I like this diagram because basically it's famous, like the narrow carbon view on many, well, on climate change, and it shows that if we have a very narrow view, maybe we're not looking at all these interactive or intertwined causes of the problem, or even like probable solutions, or maybe we miss that maybe a solution could create more trouble down the road, right? So what can we do about it? Wait. I knew this was gonna happen. Okay. So it's been argued, and I think obviously, this department is obviously multidisciplinary. So we should move from narrow disciplinary to multi or even transdisciplinary approaches. And so what that means is that we should have our narrow view, but never forget about having a wider view, and better if we have more people involved with both narrow views so that we can focus on our question, but never forget the whole context or the rest of it. All right, so ecohydrology. So I'm an ecohydrologist since my master's, and I was, I think, lucky to end up in that program that was put together in the Netherlands with the idea of training us as very well, they would say, well-rounded hydrologists. And how they meant was that hydrology should be ecohydrology and not hydrology being a subdiscipline of hydrology. And by that, I think then I wouldn't think about it, but now that I keep on thinking about it, it was because it's ecohydrology thought of as an integrative science. A science that studies the mutual interaction between the hydrological cycle and ecosystems with, like, let's say, two sides of the same coin, where it seeks to find hydrological mechanisms that underlie ecological processes and patterns, and the other side as well. So it seeks to find to understand the feedbacks of biotic processes that impact the water cycle. And so basically, so what do we integrate? I would like to think that we for some reason it's not. So we're integrating ecosystem ecology, functional ecology, and hydrology. And so what does this different, I don't know, seemingly, well, they are normally different disciplines, right? Even sometimes from different departments, it's like biological sciences and earth sciences, and probably sometimes they don't even talk to each other. But by integrating this, then ecosystems ecology provides a system thinking mentality, you know? We think in the system, what comes in, what gets transformed, what goes out, what are the boundaries, how whatever is outside of the boundary affects what's inside, or maybe it doesn't affect anything, or how complex is it, how many other components compose the system. And then functional ecology provides a mechanistic and also, like, say, trait-based understanding of the components that make up that system that interests us. And hydrology, well, provides a conceptual and mechanistic, hopefully, understanding of how water moves through the system and across the system of interest. Where and when does it occur? And in what quality? And how does that quality even changes when it moves across or within the ecosystem of interest? So let's see, yeah. So I like to, when we talk about ecohydrology in Mexico, we like to show this picture. This is a semi-arid ecosystem in the northeast of Mexico that it's affected. Its ecosystem productivity is affected by the availability of water. So it's a water I forgot the name of the word, but it's water limited ecosystem, right? So we can see during the wet season, it's flourishing, the net ecosystem productivity is super high. And during the dry season, it's not. But then we would think, oh yeah, there's water, plants grow, and that's the end of it. So precipitation just occurs to it and affects it. But there's a feedback too. The North American monsoon is also sustained by the increase of evapotranspiration from the evapotranspiration from the landscape as well. So we like to think in ecohydrology that we integrate the carbon or the net primary productivity or the ecosystem and production with different hydrological processes. Okay, so also ecohydrology is being proposed since I think the last decade of the last century by UNESCO as an applied science approach. And I think they still, they don't have money, they don't fund anything that I know of, but at least they said that this is the way we should try to solve water-related problems. So problems with water scarcity, bad quality of water, and also excess of water or flooding. So basically what it is, it's just to move from monitoring and sectorial science, they call it, to experimental testing and interdisciplinary science to system solution or transdisciplinary science. And by transdisciplinary, it means that there are only academic actors, but also non-academic actors so that the solutions can be effective and put into action. Okay, so I hope I convince you that we should all be ecohydrologists. All right, so I hope I don't take too much time, but what I would like to do now is to show you, maybe not with a lot of detail because then it would take for a long time, but I would like to show you examples of things that I've been, big projects or lines of research that I've been involved with in different capacities. Since forever, since I ever started my academic career, I've always been part of multidisciplinary projects. To be honest, I don't even know how to work by myself. So these are all part of different projects that are the first one was really big, and the others are smaller in terms of funding and people. Okay, so the first, wait, and then if I have time and you still are here with interest, I can tell you a little bit. It's more like advertisements about my educational and network building endeavors that I like to think about them. Okay, so the first one is it's a pretty big project that was funded by the NSF, actually, by 3 PIs from the US and another researcher from the Netherlands, and I think also several Mexican researchers. So this is where I did my PhD. So this is how I was trained to do science and to think about science. The question or the issue was that, okay, wait, yeah. So this is a picture of the mountain there in Mexico. You can see here a part of the cloud forest and how whatever that's not cloud forest, how it looks. I don't know if you can actually see it, but the soil is very degraded. It's a mountainous region, so the slopes can be very, very pronounced. They have mostly pasture and small plots of annual crops, basically corn, mixed with beans and other food staples. Okay, so where we are. So here we are, this is the Gulf of Mexico, and this is going up the mountain up to the Cofre Perote and the volcano, which is, I'm sorry, everything is in meters above sea level. And here, this is the cloud forest belt that goes from 1,200 to 2,000 meters above sea level. And Jalapa and Coatepec cities are around here. So the main issue, obviously, is deforestation of the region. This is an idea of how it was in pre-colonial times, the forest covering the state of Veracruz. And by 2002, and this is very outdated, but not a lot of things have happened in the positive direction. So by 2002, more than 70% of the original vegetation was already covered to pastures or any other cover, mostly pasture and annual crops. So then we have this, mountain rivers are or streams are very responsive to precipitation. And it didn't occur before, but as time passes and climate change and also land use change combined, this is how the rivers by, let's say, the lower cloud forest altitude respond. So this is the dry season and this is the wet season. So most of the people that live here depend on direct water uptakes from these streams or springs. So you can imagine the big problem that it is during the dry season is the hottest season. And there's a lot of societal problems already with the water scarcity. And then during the rainy season, then we have floods and bank erosion and more water pollution and all the bad things that you can imagine from. And so we are living in this dual, pretty much chronic problems, okay? So obviously, so the government said, okay, so if the problem is that we are running, so the forest was deforested, so let's just plant more trees and then we're gonna have more water, right? Easy. So these were all the team of scientists that were together and decided to tackle this question. Is it true that more forests produce more water or not? Because this is a hydrological question for a long time, and it was proposed that no, more forest is actually less stream water, because forests drink water too, right? And if it's plantations, they are young and they are growing fast, and they take a lot of water to grow. But this question was still important for the tropics, for volcanic lithology too. So I like to introduce the whole team. So there's a forest ecologist, a tropical hydrologist, hydrologist from the US, a modeler. These two guys are the geomorphologist and soil scientist from Colombia, and a plant ecophysiologist. And we were 2 or 3 PhD students and 2 postdocs and a master's student. So the nice thing about this is that you can imagine so many different ways of looking at the problem, right? This is a plant water use problem, it's a hydrology problem. The soil, obviously, it's definitely what the water storage that has to be understood to know how water will be directed either further down ground or towards the surface. So what did we do? Just to show you a little bit of what we knew or what we learned through the research is that there's a large gradient of rainfall. This is one hydrological year, and these are precipitation means of several years of data that we have now. And so it rains much more in the upper cloud forest than in the lower cloud forest. There's also interesting, there is plant water stress during the dry season, and it affects how trees or plants in general respond. This is a picture of the soil, one of the soil pits. I thought some of you might appreciate it to see how it looks. You can see there's like a paleosols and so on. So there's slopes, right? So we have evidence of like the movement of sediments because of the slopes. But anyway, that's just because you guys are soil people too. All right, so we basically instrumented with everything that was available. So meteorological station, so the part of the meteorology was covered, stream or surface hydrology, forest hydrology, or through flow and stem flow and sap flow. And we had 3 first order catchments totally instrumented, and some plots where we didn't have catchments covered with this new pine plantation. So we only did plot hydrology. Okay. So just a quick, what did we find? This is the conceptual model that was put together. I know it looks like a cartoon, but we like it. And so I'm going to go through from the atmosphere and plant or the soil plant atmosphere continuum and then to hydrology. So, and actually I think it's important to have, I always tell the students that you have to have a diagram, you have to have a conceptual model. What's your system, what's going in and what's going out? Better if it looks like a cartoon. Cartoons then turn into, with equations and with data, turn into models that we can use to predict and to have to use them as virtual experiments. So it's important. Okay, so we did all sorts of analysis of when fog occurred and how it occurred. So fog plus rain events were more frequent than only fog. And cloud water interception was very, very little compared to other cloud forests. It was just about 1% of precipitation because the events were always pretty much rain events or drizzle events with cloud immersion. And fog occurred anyhow 32% of the time, inducing canopy wetness pretty much all the time and reducing the evapotranspiration from the forest. And something else that was important was that we analyzed that if all cloud immersion disappeared because of climate change or land use change in the lower area region, so if regional cloud formation was changed, then transpiration would be around 20% higher, changing a little bit the budget of the water budget of these places. So we also found that 30% of the dry nighttime hours induce quite important plant water use or evapotranspiration. And that was something that we weren't expecting. And so there's actually a lot of return of water from the surface to the atmosphere, much more than any other cloud forest that was researched by them. And so also what I was saying, that plant water is reduced in response to soil water content. And then, so this was also a surprise because we thought the ecosystem wasn't really necessarily getting any plant water stress, but the dry season, even if it's short, it's inducing that. So just to show you that, because we were monitoring everything with a lot of frequency, we could look at how the plant water use was responding to all sorts of different environmental variables. So that's how we were able to figure out a lot of things of how plants, how the water moves through this plant atmosphere continuum. Yeah, this is what I was telling you, that trees reduce their consumption of water with the soil being dried. So during the drought, that's how they survive. And if the drought gets too long, then the evapotranspiration reduces. So the feedback to the atmosphere is like drier and drier. Yeah. Okay. So something else that we found out is that the main water source for plants is shallow soil water, and this was done with stable water isotopes. It was also part of the evidence that there's or that supports these two or more water worlds, that precipitation can move really fast and exit through streams without necessarily being used by plants or even evaporated enough to change substantially its isotope signature. So this was part of this two world hypothesis that was cooking up by those years by Jeff McDonald and others. Okay, so we have volcanic soils, and these are very low bulk density, high porosity, high saturated hydraulic conductivity. They have this super high water storage capacity, and you can imagine this chunk of land being steeped. It's also there's a big bucket of water that can be filled. We have breccias and the broken or saprolite, and that's the basement of the catchment. And so there are preferential water flows that basically move water vertically. There's not a lot of lateral flow, only very close to the streams. So how hydrology works then precipitation events during the wet season pretty much pushes all the water that is being stored in the soil, and then it exits in the streams. How do we know this? Because basically most of the events that were checked with stable isotopes, the water was mainly base flow of pretty much all the events. So there was not a lot of surface water flow. And this was checked in the mature forest, secondary forest, and also in the pasture. Only in the pasture, actually, there was a little bit of runoff, overland runoff. Okay, and so this is important because then now we have evidence to show that, I mean, how does hydrology works there, right? So now we know that during the dry season, the catchments that are forested can sustain stream flow even after even 8 weeks without substantial rain events. Whereas other catchments that don't have forest, or the soil is not conserved because of the forest cover, they run dry. And yeah, which basically, and also, so precipitation, if the precipitation doesn't infiltrate and percolate during the wet season, then base flow during the dry season can be reducing to 30 or 70%. And that's why these rivers then run dry, right? So all of these help to support this payment for water services there in the local municipality of Coatepec. And somehow, well, talking and talking. Coca-Cola and Nestle are supporting very little the program, but still, it's a good thing that they pay the farmers to conserve as much as forest as they can. There is no really conversion from crops to forest because it's very little money yet. But still, these things are now being told to society very a lot, very frequently, so that we can, so that everybody knows that we need to conserve the forest for the soil, for the water. Okay. So I know you're not going to read it, but this is all some of the papers that came out of that. And we are actually really proud of that project because it also helped us think about what else we could do afterwards, right? So I knew I was gonna take a lot of time talking. And so just wanted to run a little bit faster through other things that we did afterwards in the region. So we have an ecohydrological observatory in a shaded coffee plantation that is polyculture. So it's shaded with diverse shaded trees. And it doesn't look like this without cover, like some parts in Brazil that they produce coffee, or it doesn't look like this either, that are mostly the very highly commercial or intensified coffee production. So they look like this, like very diverse. Okay, so now you know where your coffee comes from, maybe. From this shrub that evolved to be an understory shrub. Okay, so if the coffee shrubs are grown under the sun, is because they were modified to sustain high radiation. Okay, so I'd like to invite you, everybody, to check this website. It's an MexFlux webinar that we put together a series so a lot of people could meet the site, because here we have a flux tower. It was mainly water flux tower because there was no carbon monitoring. And so here Friso, his TPI, Friso Holwerda, tells the whole story about the site. It's kind of neat. We had smaller flux campaigns in the sugarcane plantation, and also campaigns to measure the soil water fluxes with eddy covariance. And so whoever tells you that eddy covariance can only be done in towers above the canopy, you can come and talk to us, because now you can pretty much do it. It's just tricky, but you can do it. So we also have sap flux with mini sap flow sensors in the coffee shrubs, and this is a project of a student, so not ready for prime time. But we've done a lot of plant water stable isotopes studies to know how competitive or complementary the water use strategies of the shade trees and the coffee shrubs is. And since last year, we set up a flux tower with carbon analyzer above the coffee shrubs. So yeah, I'm not gonna go through everything, but again, another QR code. But we have a MexFlux, we have a newsletter where we synthesize a lot of the knowledge that has been produced in that ecohydrological observatory. And so we put it in Zenodo. It's just a PDF with a bunch of stuff coming from agro ecosystems in Mexico that have flux towers. Okay, so I'm just gonna go skip this a little bit, but so the current issues that we want to address there is the drought and heat waves affect, how does it affect coffee productivity, the actual product of coffee, and also the ecosystem net production, because this is just time series of the humidity and temperature during that heat wave of 2023, which was smaller than during 2024. And I don't know if you can see, but humidity went all the way to 20%, which is totally unprecedented for a cloud, for humid environment. We were with our lips chapped, and which only happens when we come to dry climates. And the temperature was sustainedly high, which was not, well, it's not too different, but with the dryness of the air, it was really intense. So those are the current issues that we are tackling now. So I know if you guys are still not tired, I can keep on going. So yeah, I think I still have time for the last, let's say, area of research that I am. Maybe you can see that I have broad interests, but basically, I've been involved also in mangrove, in some research with mangroves, and especially how hydrological disconnectivity or reconnectivity affects how the mangrove ecosystem works or functions. So, like I was saying, this is an example of one of those, like there are also papers that call it ghost forest because it has happened. This is a consequence of flood regime disruption basically in a lot of mangroves, and I think it also happened in the Everglades at some point. So there are papers about ghost forests that they look kind of really sad. Okay, so this is a big project in Veracruz. Like I was saying, I think it was like 90 or more hectares of these mangrove dying because of basically there's a thermoelectric plant here, and they built embankments. Yeah, is that a word? Yes, embankments to be able to put this tower electricity conducting towers. And they were supposed to open channels through the embankments so that the water flow would keep on going, but they never did. Actually, it was written in the project and they never did. This was in the 80s. So about like 2004 or something like that, maybe I'm telling the story wrong, but around 2004 or something, the first symptoms of this dieback appeared. So the trees are starting to lose foliage and dying, and then all of a sudden completely died. And so what happened is that the site comes over hypersaline because of, the water is not changing and it should be. And that hypersalinity then turns the soil toxic with sulfur. And then what happens is that all the trees die and the soil also collapses because all these, root mats that were holding the sediments are gone. They're decomposing rapidly and the soil collapses. So that feeds back positively into more dieback and more dieback because the water is not moving. It's like lower now and it's stagnated there, and then it evaporates and salinity increases. So salinity was like 3 times more than the Gulf of Mexico. And then what to do, right? So my colleague Jorge Lopez Portillo in INECO, he's a mangrove ecosystem psychology, and he said we have to go in there with how do you call them, the retroexcavadoras, the big machines, and cut the embankment. That's all we have to do, and he would get money to plant mangroves in the dead mud flat. By the government and also by the thermoelectric company. And he was like, no, I don't need trees. We don't need to plant anything. All we have to do is artificially make the water run through in and out until it flushes everything. And so, yeah, the whole story, like he tells it, it's like funny because he got the money for planting. So he was like, okay, give me money for planting. And he uses it for to get the machines in. And then he was like, if I get in trouble, well, doesn't matter. So actually nobody asked why he was doing it. So it didn't matter. So in the end, yeah, he was proved right. All he needed to do was to restore the hydrology. And you can see now there are a lot of like mounds that were built by local people because the soil collapsed. So even if the water went in, it was like really hard to have it go out actually and to recirculate and to flush how he thought it needed to be. So this was not in 1 year, but it was like, I think 12 years of trying to make it more and more. And until they also had to do this, like artificial flow paths, to make like a stream to carve into channels to connect with the lagoon. That was not normally how it was. Like naturally, this part of mangrove wasn't connected hydrologically by the surface with the lagoon that's there. But it had to be done so that it was like, so that the flushing of the water would be massive, right? So when that was done, there wasn't even like one tree planted. All the propagals that came from the conserved mangrove were enough to basically what you see there, which is like incredible. Whenever he tells the story, I think he had like 5 mangroves to plant just for the picture, for the report. So that was funny. And yeah, he's a really fun guy to know. So I've been working with him and his group, so that we need to learn more about how to diagnose or how to know when a mangrove is getting these early disconnected or early disruptions to its hydrological regime. So we use frequency analysis of the water column depth to characterize how does it look when a mangrove is hydrologically connected, and also to explain these little colors, right? Like, what is it? Is it or to what capacity is it the tide? Which tide? Is it I don't know how to say these words in English, but nip tide or the other tide? Or is it the wind patterns or is it precipitation? So we need to characterize this, like typify how, and if we can probably use the signals to compare it in time to see when something is different, right? So we made this comparison with hydrologically disconnected mangrove and a connected mangrove in the same so the comparisons were in the same coastal setting, but in 3 different places in Mexico. So we at least got the concept proof that we could probably use these signals to diagnose how connected or disconnected different coastal settings are. So hopefully this will help to monitor some of the areas of mangroves in Mexico to see when something is wrong. Now I should say that this disconnectivity not necessarily happens only because of artificial or human-made alterations. Sometimes the fringe mangrove would accrete more or more rapidly than any opening of the water going. So there's always like this basin mangrove that it gets less flooded than the fringe mangrove. So this could also happen naturally, and this is good to know also, or to know your ecology of these ecosystems, because then there's this thing about this, then this could change to another type of coastal wetland, which is like more herbaceous, or because these grasses are even more tolerant to salinity sometimes. But anyway, I'm getting away from whatever I was gonna say. Okay, so with students, we are also checking the soil atmospheric carbon fluxes from the different stages of mangrove degradation to restoration. And so we do it with a smart chamber and a portable gas analyzer. And also, this was also because there was a concern of, maybe we're putting a lot of carbon back in the atmosphere because of the restoration project, because artificially we had to move so much of the sediments and expose them to the atmosphere. And so yes, so these are the CO2 fluxes of the icelands or the mounds from the soil only. So we can see that from 1 year to, these are different, this is a time series. So when they are growing, we can actually see more CO2 coming out of their sediments. Also because this is black mangrove. So this is not only the soil, but also their roots. They're, what is it? Pneumatophores? Pneumatophores? I don't know how to say that in English, but they are basically like little pipes that respire a lot. Okay, so these are methane fluxes, and with methane we have a little bit less difference between the different stages, but we do see an increasing methane emission also as these mounds keep on growing. Okay, so lastly, I wanted to show you what we found also from flux towers from mangroves. This one was in a basin mangrove. Just to make the story short, or the most important thing is that while we were monitoring, we were lucky enough to have this non-flooded period that was more saline than the rest. And during that period of no flood and sustained high temperatures, the basin mangrove functioned like a net source of CO2. And those were these 3 months here, but there were 2 months previous that it wasn't flooded, and it was it's a dry season basically, but it was a anomalous dry and hot season. And so, yeah, so basically what we stated is that by modulating salinity and temperature, flood regime is the absolute preeminent control of ecosystem productivity. This was known and said by ecologists in the 70s, but now we have the data of the monitoring, right? So this is important, the salinity and the flood regime. So I'm gonna just skip here to say that, so these are all the mangrove sites that have flux towers in the world, the ones that have black letters, and these are the ones that are in Mexico. So imagine if we didn't have these observations. We actually have another basin mangrove that is an annual net source of carbon. That means that ecosystem respiration it's even more than the productivity. The mangrove still has primary productivity because the trees still grow, but the respiration is much more than that. So it still grows, but it's still using carbon. So the carbon from the storage in the soils is going away, right? I mean, or else I don't know where it's coming from. But anyway, so we like this graph, synthesis graph, because if we didn't have these observations from Mexico, from like drier and basin mangroves, we would think that maybe medium annual precipitation could explain net ecosystem productivity from the mangroves, because I didn't show it here, but there's a paper that shows that there is a sort of what is that relationship, but in fact maybe we are looking at the wrong control, right? So if we plot net ecosystem productivity versus maximum salinity that is reported in the site, then we get a nicer relationship. And all of these in green are the Mexican sites. So this is just to show that that I'm going to go back here. I'm sorry. This is just to show that of all the flux tower sites in the whole of America, Latin America and Mexico, we feel a gap of the very wet and hot and the very dry and hot. Even if these towers were only running for a year, not having that data, it's having us blind. You can imagine all this data is being used for global models of all sorts of things, all sorts of synthesis, like I showed you, like, oh, the terrestrial carbon sink, right? If we didn't have observations from ecosystems that are actually sources, then we would think all mangroves are net sinks, but it's not the case. So yeah, just to not take a lot of more time, I am showing you the people that are behind, or we are now like new generation of scientists that found positions in Mexico. A lot of us were trained outside, mostly of the flux scientists in Mexico come from Sonora, from the eastern north of Mexico. So they went to Arizona State University or to other universities, to Texas, and they decided to come back to Mexico. And we were fortunate to actually find positions. We wouldn't be able to do this if we were postdocs. And so we said, okay, we should be more organized. We should share data through the open data repository of MexFlux, because it's also, I think, a colonial legacy for older generations not to want to share their data. And so if we're saying that these little dots are important, but if we don't share the data, it's as if it didn't existed, right? So yeah, so basically that's how I would like to end. And just to say that we were able to get also, because we're organized now, we were able to put together a flux course in Spanish in INECOL, and we had 28 students from I think 9 countries in Latin America, because we do believe that we need to have scientists in the global south, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to advance how we should. Okay, so yeah, I'll leave you there with my email. And I can't name everybody I've been out in the field with, but I wanted to put some pictures also. Jake is there. So write me if you want to go over there or wherever we are in MexFlux. That's what I wanted to show you also. We are in 13 institutions across Mexico. So you're all welcome to come and spend 1 month or to do all sorts of things over there. So yeah, so thank you very much. I'm sorry it took longer.
Thank you. If you have questions, you can also ask Susana outside during the refreshment. So let's have 1 or 2 quick questions here, then we can join. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry if it was everywhere.
Okay. All right.
So
How far was the MexFlux?
Okay, so where I had the tower was here in the Caribbean. I spent 2.5 years there before I was in INECOL. I lived in Chetumal, that's where my son was born. And the tower was here. And now we have actually 2 more towers, one in northern Yucatan and another one here in Nayarit. Yeah, but the restored mangrove story is from here, from central Veracruz. It's like, well, because it's the roads and everything is like 4 hours from INECO.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a very broad question for you. So since you have experience doing research in the global north and also in Mexico, how do you think, what are the major differences among these 2 regions, and how do you think science is done differently in the global north?
Well, so let's say the first difference is that there are, I don't want to say unlimited resources, but there are much more resources in the north, in the global north. Until now. No, I'm kidding. Well, you're getting into trouble, but I don't know. There's still little funds from Mexico, but for the first time ever, we were able to convince our federal government that this is worth it, that this could help somehow. Like, the flux towers are expensive, super expensive. Everything, any technology is 20 times more expensive in Mexico. So if an IRGA here costs $20,000, in Mexico, we have to pay $20,000, but in pesos, and also the import. So everything gets harder because of that. So yeah, so being here, you have more resources. That means not only money and equipment, but institutional, right? The department is set up, and sometimes I'm like a 1-person orchestra at the flux site. I'm the data person, I'm the technician, I'm everything, right? And sometimes I have a student and sometimes not. So basically that. And I don't know, I feel like at least in Mexico, we are public servants and we are reminded of that every single day. So, yeah, we have so many bureaucracy to go around. For the government, we are the same as like clerk in a public institution. So if you want to go to the field for more than 7 days, you have to ask for permission. So if you want to go to a congress, you have to say you're not going to be a tourist. So yeah, so those are the things that are hard. Basically, other than that, well, we were talking about it with Azucena the other day that also the older generations are very, very narrow and close to collaborations and also very territorial of their study sites, which is like stupid, but so yeah, but that's kind of changing because we are younger or because we went out and they're coming back, I think. I'm not really sure if that probably plays a role. So yeah, I feel here, at least in people could be close and narrow and not open to collaboration, but I think it's less in general. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's take just one more question.
Yeah,
and then wrap
and then we go.
Yeah.
Okay, one quick one. So thank you for the great presentation. I love kind of like what you showed about coffee as well. My family also uses coffee done in years. So I'd be curious, kind of like based on your experience, it's a beloved beverage across the world. Most of the coffee production is sold in, developing countries.
Yeah.
How do so based on kind of like your findings and kind of like what you have researched, kind of like what would you love to see, kind of like some frontier next questions that we should be looking into to kind of like, provide more resilience towards this sector and industry.
More resilience? Or
Yeah, so again, kind of like, areas we think that we should be like researching more. We would like to see more kind of like based on their findings, just to provide more resilience to that industry.
Yeah, so Mexican coffee production, it's not going towards the sun exposed production or like very commercial. Actually, that's kind of neat that I think the coffee production in Mexico is like it's highly, I think it's even proud. They even are proud about it because it's like a biocultural thing, these types of plantations are even like family small plots. And they are mostly like a garden. So the trees are providing all sorts of food and also, so they're also big and commercial plantations, but I think they're not going into like the Brazilian type of coffee production that is like not everywhere, but it's like extensive sun exposed. I've been in Guatemala and they are taking out the shade and favoring like less quality in the coffee for the sun exposed. So I think, so at least we think more research on the benefits of shade would be good, because that's why we were doing the competition of water, because at some point there was a disease called the coffee rust. It attacked a lot of Mexico, and for some reason everybody thought, oh, obviously it's because it's a fungus, so it's because of the shade. So take the shade out, which it's been proven that's not that. It's actually the rust is always there, but it's a problem when the soil fertility is really low. Sorry. So the coffee cannot, be strong enough to sustain. So that's what we are actually, trying to tell all the benefits of the shade. And so I think, well, I don't know, that what we think it's important is to know the drought tolerance of the coffee, because it's coming. Last year in Brazil, the coffee production went so down that it affected the global market of coffee. And on the flip side, Mexico won because the drought wasn't so much, so was able to sell a lot of coffee. But we think the shade will help reduce the effects of the drought and the heat. But we're not really completely sure, because then competitiveness can happen among the different within the community, right? The plant community. Yeah. All right. All right.
Yeah, please join Susana at the refreshment outside, and then talk about cloud forest and mangrove forest, and MexFlux, and there'll be a lot of topics that we can cover for collaboration. So please give a big hands to Sandra. Thank you.
I think there were some questions here, but. All right, thank you very much. There's a lot of things.
Yeah. As it's getting more and more interested as you can.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Yeah, there's so many details
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on. And I've been everywhere because I cannot say no, so I like everything, so. But that's why I did my sabbatical to like stop going around.
Also, so great is given that this is in this series of internationals, because series that is, is talking about how this is that here, and mangroves is like here, cloud voices is